Everybody, this is Practice. I'm going to talk kind of quietly because I'm in a family campground right now. My boy and I are camping for a week, and it's kind of impolite to talk particularly loud, especially in the morning hours. So I'm making some tea over our little rocket stove that we have here. What I want to talk about in this video is if you're ever camping or bugging out and it is going to be really rainy, which is certainly a possibility wherever you might be, how to kind of try to keep your tent from getting wet on the inside, because this week it has been forecast to be super rainy. We have this trip planned for months, and the whole summer's been pretty rainy, and this week in particular was looking really wet. We had a big thunderstorm come through last night. It went from 1 minute it was totally fine, and then 5 minutes later absolute downpour and lightning and wind and everything. So it's been a kind of a challenging week, but it hasn't been bad because we've been prepared for it. So I want to give you a little tour around this campsite and show you what we've done to try to make it so that we don't get wet on the inside of the tent. So let's kind of pop around here. One thing you might notice in the background is that there's a highway sound, and it's one of the funny things about when I go camping is that it's actually there's more civilization when I tend to go camping at these family campgrounds than back home. Once we get back home, we get back to the peace and quiet of the forest. So this is the campsite that we set up. We've got our tent, we've got our little cook area, we've got a couple of tarps overhanging it. Now the tarps make it obviously so that the areas that we're covering with the tarps don't get wet. And one important reason to have a tarp over a tent is that these rain flies that are made for tents, they rarely work very well, at least in my experience. And I've been backpacking and camping for a long time. When you buy a new tent, it'll usually have a rain fly that'll be good for maybe a couple of years, but after that it starts developing leaks up in the top, and the thing starts leaking pretty soon thereafter that. But even before that, if you want to look around kind of the edge here, this here is the rain fly material, and underneath right there, that's the tent. Now even when this thing is working perfectly, the water comes down the side, and a lot of times it'll be kind of splattering. It'll splash up onto the inside tent area there. Now it doesn't make the tent terribly wet, but it certainly kind of makes the edges a little bit wet. So that's one reason why I like throwing a tarp over our tent, because even if you have a brand new tent and even if the rain fly works pretty well, you're always kind of getting that kind of spatter effect. So that's one line of defense that we have, is just taking a tarp and putting it up over the entire tent area. And the way that we do that is I'll use a couple of poles. Here's one pole here that we've cut, and it goes into the ground there, and I brought these from home. Up at the very top, it's got a little screw stuck into the top, and that just goes through the hole in the grommet in the side of the tent. And then I've got a line that runs down and stakes into the ground. So we did that for this corner. The other corners are being held up by, this one's just tied to a tree over here. And we've got a simple loop knot here that we kind of pulled up through, and I just threw a tent stake through, and it's grabbing that way. The opposite corner over there is being held up by the same method, and then I'll just kind of show you our last corner over there. We just simply tied up to a tree using that same method. Now, one other thing that's really important, especially if you're on any kind of a sloped site, is to do some trenching. And I'm going to show you the tool that I use for doing trenching. Now this site here, it's a little hard to tell in video because, depending on how you hold the camera, it can be like, oh, we're tenting on the side of a mountain, or it's incredibly level. The way that this site is it's a little bit like this. There's kind of a slope that goes down in this direction, and the water flows in that direction. When we got here, we could even see evidence of it, because we can see right here, there's kind of evidence that there's been some flow going through here. So the water kind of comes up from this high area and flows down through here. So when we were placing the tent down, we did a trench around the tent. So the idea is that as the water comes down, it'll go down into this trench, and it's going to go around your tent. It's essentially kind of like making a moat to go around your tent. And this trench goes all the way around this side, and then goes down the hill over here. And you can really see last night how much water went through there. I'm not sure if it shows that much on camera, but this is very clearly, you know, water flowing through this area with all these stretch marks. So we had a lot of water kind of flowing down the hill in that direction, and same thing over on this side. You can see the grass kind of pulled over here as the water came down here and flowed down on this side. As you're doing the trenching, you naturally tend to have some extra dirt, so as you dig the trench out, you want to pop the dirt up onto the side facing your tent, and that makes kind of like a dike on the other side of the trench, and that really helps to keep it from overflowing. And last night, like I said, we had a real deluge, and this trench kept us totally dry. Now, the tool that I use for doing the trenching, you know, you can honestly use anything. You just use a stick that you find on site. You can use a rock. I was talking to a guy yesterday right here at this campground. He used to camp like a lawn chair that he just happened to have because he wasn't very prepared. So you don't always have to have the right tools. But this is a tool that I really like. This is a sawed shovel, and I'm going to open this thing up and show you guys how it works. Alright, so inside the little carrying case, you get this. And there's lots of different companies that make these. I like the Sawed company because I feel like they make a lot of really well-made tools. So that's why I went with this one. But there's lots of companies that make similar things. If you're interested in this particular shovel, I'll just put a link down in the description below to this one. But I've had this one for many years, and it's held up really well. Now, it has a little screw that allows you to open the thing up like this, and by tightening or loosening this, it makes it so you can, you know, fold the thing back up again. Now, it can be used in a number of different ways. You can use just the shovel like this. On the other side, there's kind of like a pick that you can use, and you can have it in either of those orientations, like that or like that, or you can do it like this and tighten it up like that. And this is actually kind of the way that I tend to prefer to do it. Tighten that up, and that tightens up all these. If I do it properly, there we go. It tightens the whole thing up. And I kind of like this because then I can kind of grab onto this side, and I can use it to kind of like you know, trench a little a hole like that. Yeah, I mean, that's about all there is to it, but it's a really nice tool. You know, the ones that SOG makes is, you know, it's you know, really strong. I know a lot of times people have these like tactical shovels, and you screw together a bunch of handle pieces. I know a Canadian Prepper has one of those that he's, you know, swears by, and he says it's really great. I've been given a bunch of those by a lot of different companies to test, and they've all been real garbage for me. So if you're going to get one of those tactical multi-tool shovels where you screw together all of the pieces, at least in my experience, you have a better chance of it being a piece of crap than it being something decent. And this, what I like about it, is it's awfully small. When it breaks all down, and I'm just going to bring it back up, it's a really, really small package. It's a lot smaller than all of those, you know, tactical multi-tool shovels, and it's really, really rugged. You know, one of those multi-tool shovels, it claimed that it could be used as an axe. I didn't think that it was going to be possible. Here's a link to that video if you want to look at that thing. You know, a lot of times tools will make claims about what they can do, and you know, you got to take it with a grain of salt, and you know, test your stuff out before you use it. This thing, I've tested, it works really well. You know, a lot of other stuff, companies make claims kind of hoping that you're never actually going to have to use a thing, or you're just never going to feel like using it, and you know, you'll never find out that you got swindled and the thing's kind of a piece of garbage. This, it's worked for me for many, many years. In fact, here's the evidence. Whenever you see somebody, you know, doing a review on you know, YouTube for anything, and the thing was brand new, you gotta have some questions about that. Look, we've got some scuff marks on the bottom here. There's some rust, you know, going on here. You know, this is something that's actually used. Like all the paint on this front edge is all gone. Now that's what you should really be looking for when you know, somebody is talking about whether something works or not on YouTube is look and see whether the thing looks like it's actually ever been used. In fact, if I was going to give you advice on this pick here, would you want to take my advice on that pick? Because look at that. Does that look like it's ever been used? I honestly don't ever really use the pick. I think it looks like maybe I used it like once or twice. But clearly, I'm a guy you want to take advice about when it comes to using the shovel part of this tool, not about using the pick. Because clearly, I just don't use the pick very much, other than it's like a handle, like I mentioned earlier. So yeah, if you're going to be doing any kind of camping, if you have the idea that you want to have camping supplies ready to be used for a bug out kind of situation, make sure you have some kind of a trenching tool. Again, you can use like a rock or a stick from the environment around you, and that's fine, and you can make do with that. But this thing works really easy, really quickly, and it takes a job that, if you're doing it with a stick, it would be probably 3 or 4 times as long, and it'd be kind of like a pain in the butt, and it makes it happen really, really quickly. And at least for this little sog shovel, it's a really small package. It's I don't know, it's a couple of pounds. So it doesn't add a lot of bulk or weight to your packs, and I think it's definitely worth it. That's it. Definitely get out there and do some camping. It can be really fun, and it can be really challenging. And if your plan is that if you ever needed to bug out, you would do camping, you really want to practice it ahead of time to find out that it's I should have a shovel instead of a lawn chair to do trenching, or just find out that you need to do trenching. A lot of people don't even realize you need to do that. I go around here and at the campground, and there's a lot of people, and they don't have any trenches around their tents, and there's a downhill slope, and I know last night they got drenched. The water went right underneath their tent. Which brings me to one other thing that you guys should probably know about. I'm going to pick up the camera here, and that is underneath your tent. It's a really good idea. Let's see if I can get a good look at it here. It's a really good idea to have a tarp for underneath your tent. And that makes it so that if there is any ground wetness, it's not going to get up in there. And you'll notice that you can't see the tarp, and that's the point. Where's the tarp? See the blue tarp in there? A lot of people, they hear, from YouTube people or something like that you should put a tarp underneath your tent. So they do it, and they don't really understand exactly what they're doing. And a lot of times, that they'll have the tarps extending several feet out from underneath their tent. And what that does is it makes it so rainwater falls down, hits the tarp, and then flows right underneath their tent. It's almost like they designed a catchment system to make sure that water would get underneath their tent as much as possible. Because if they didn't have a tarp, then the water would hit the ground, and much of it would absorb down into the ground. But if you put a tarp under your tent and it overextends off to the sides, you're making it so that none of the water absorbs into the ground, and it all is going to flow right down underneath your tent. So if you're setting up, make sure you have a tarp for under the tent. It's good to have a tarp for over the tent, even if you got a new rain fly. They're not perfect, and this is going to keep you a lot drier. And definitely make sure you have a trench on the uphill side of your tent, so that when the water is coming through, it gets redirected and goes around you. Hope you found this video helpful. Get out camping, and thanks for watching. Please subscribe for new videos all the time. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can do so either through Patreon or PayPal.